soldiers. And here in Lebanon, nowhere is safe as Israel expands its assault, targeting a northern town. Also coming up, a divisive election issue in a battleground state. We hear from the women driving for 7 hours to get an abortion.
I had been so let down by my state. For those people that are so against it, think of the other women, such as myself.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff.
And why this NASA spacecraft is searching for signs of alien life on one of Jupiter's moons. Good evening from Beirut after another deadly 24 hours in this region. Here in Lebanon, in Israel and in Gaza, the violence is mounting. Children killed as they played football in a refugee camp. People burnt to death in their tents, soldiers killed as they ate dinner. That is the reality of life for people here. And even as civilian casualties rise, UN peacekeeping forces in Lebanon have accused Israel of flagrantly violating international law. More on that in a moment, but we begin in northern Gaza with this report from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
The fighting in Gaza has intensified again. Yesterday, 6 children were killed after a drone strike in Al-Shati refugee camp. The boys had been playing football on the street at the time. It is not clear why Israel fired on them. Then, last night, Israeli artillery hit a UN school in northern Gaza. 20 were killed in this attack. The school was supposed to be used as a polio vaccination centre today. As the wounded were being taken to Al-Aqsa Hospital, another Israeli airstrike hit the grounds. Tents where people had been sheltering and sleeping quickly caught alight. They desperately tried to put the flames out as people tried to escape. Rescuers used blankets to try and shield them from the intense heat. One woman crawled out of the fire, still alive. But at least 4 people burned to death. This morning, people picked through the remains of the tents. The Israeli military said it was targeting a Hamas command center in both strikes, but they have so far provided no evidence of that.
My tent, it's gone. Winter is coming. What am I supposed to do? There's nothing left in there. No mattresses, no food, no blankets, all our belongings. We have nothing to wear. I only have what I'm wearing now.
The situation in northern Gaza is dire. 30 trucks of food and flour were allowed in today, the first aid to get into the north for 2 weeks, according to the UN. Israel has ordered everyone to leave and is carrying out another major ground operation. Many Gazans are refusing to move, though, either because they have nowhere to go or because they don't want to surrender their homes to the Israeli military. It is becoming increasingly impossible for them to stay, however. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Well, as you heard there, Israel says 30 trucks of aid have now been allowed to enter northern Gaza. That's the first in over 2 weeks. Coming up, I'll hear from the retired general who's proposing a controversial military strategy there, and from an aid worker who's seen the humanitarian impact of all this. But let's focus for now on Lebanon. Tonight, the Israeli Prime Minister warned his forces will continue to strike Hezbollah everywhere, he said, including here in Beirut. Benjamin Netanyahu also said the charge that Israel deliberately attacked UNIFIL personnel after 5 peacekeepers were injured was completely false. He's once again called for the UN to withdraw them from combat zones. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi reports on the strain in relations between Israel and the UN.
This is all that's left of an apartment block hit by an Israeli airstrike. The building flattened into a pile of rubble. The people inside didn't stand a chance, and rescue workers are still trying to recover bodies from the site. There's been no comment from the Israeli military, and it's not clear what the target was in this mainly Christian village. With airstrikes in the north, it is apparent that Israel is expanding its attacks across the length of the country. And here in southern Lebanon, the ground invasion is also gathering pace. The Israeli military has issued more evacuation orders. But for many Lebanese, it's no longer clear where they should move to safety. Whilst the intensity of the fighting in the south shows no sign of slowing, neither does the standoff over the presence of UN peacekeepers. UNIFIL says its forces have been deliberately targeted by Israel's military, whilst Israel says they're being used as human shields by Hezbollah. It points to tunnels built next to UN compounds as evidence. The IDF's actions, though, have been condemned by 40 countries, a reflection of the international outrage.
What do you believe Israel wants to achieve by driving the UN out of South Lebanon?
Essentially to drive the eyes and ears out of South Lebanon and to give itself free rein.
Israel has also been stepping up its airstrikes in the east. This is the village of Ain Bordei. Many of the residents here had already fled in recent weeks. Lebanon is now facing a major humanitarian crisis, with more than a fifth of the population displaced by this conflict. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Tyre.
Well, Israel sent troops into Lebanon to keep its residents in the north safe, but its defence system was breached again last night when a Hezbollah drone attacked a military base 100 kilometres inland, killing 4 soldiers. Sky's international editor Dominic Waghorn has been hearing from the mother of one of those injured.
Hezbollah's latest Israeli victim was laid to rest just a few miles from the border with Lebanon. But the attack that killed him came deep into Israel, 100 miles south. Alon Amatai was one of 4 soldiers to die. His mother said she felt her heart had been ripped out by his death. Soldiers filmed scenes of chaos and bloodshed last night in the minutes after the attack. The drone came with extraordinary accuracy and timing, hitting an army canteen as recruits sat down to eat. The attack so far south and without any warning has left Israelis stunned. Hagit's son, who was injured, watched, she says, as his comrades died around him.
Supposed to be safe, where he was supposed to be safe, but unfortunately not.
And how do you feel about that as a mother?
I feel bad. I feel that there's no place that we can be safe. Understand? No place. Even in my house, I don't know if I can be safe with this weapon.
Israel's Prime Minister toured the scene of the attack. It undermines his government's claim its invasion of Lebanon makes Israel safer. But in a video message later, he insisted it would go on.
We are fighting a tough campaign against Iran's axis of evil that wants to destroy us. They won't make it. We keep fighting. We pay painful prices, but we have tremendous achievements, and we will continue to achieve them. I want to make it clear, we will continue to hit Hezbollah mercilessly in all parts of Lebanon.
In Tel Aviv security headquarters, they are also planning Israel's next move against Iran, thought to be imminent. Israel's plans to retaliate for Iran's ballistic missile attack 2 weeks ago have been strengthened by America in an unprecedented way. The US is sending a new anti-missile system and 100 soldiers to operate it, meaning for the first time American boots will be on the ground in Israel since this conflict began. The missile system will give greater range to Israel's ability to defend itself should Iran choose to strike back. While the countdown for Israel's retaliation continues, it is braced for more attacks from the north. Hezbollah says they will continue as long as Israel's invasion of Lebanon goes on. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Tel Aviv.
So as Dominic was saying there, American boots on the ground in Israel and this new advanced defence system. So what do we know about it? Well, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence Battery, or THAAD, is one of the most powerful defence batteries. The US are also sending 100 troops to man the system that's got near perfect success rates in testing against ballistic missiles. The THAAD system uses radar and support equipment to pick up any incoming missiles. The targets are identified and a rocket interceptor is launched from the ground. It's designed to lock onto the target and make a direct hit-to-kill detonation overhead. Currently, Israel's air defense is made up of the Iron Dome, David Sling and the Arrow systems, each designed to intercept missiles at different altitudes and distances. The defences build up like layers to deal with short-range rockets to longer-distance cruise missiles, but suffered lapses during Iran's recent attack. The new THAAD system adds yet another layer, with defence capabilities able to reach maximum altitudes of 40 to 150 kilometres. So let's go back to our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, who joins me now from Tyre in southern Lebanon. Good evening, Alex. So does the imminent arrival of this new defence battery suggest that some sort of action against Iran is now pretty imminent?
Yeah, we expect it is going to be imminent. When exactly, of course, is a closely guarded secret by the Israelis. There are reports that this system, this terminal high-altitude defence system, will take about a week to set up. You have, of course, as you were saying there, Mark, about 95 soldiers, American soldiers, on the ground. So it will take time. Now, there are people asking the question, if it takes around a week, does that mean that Israel will wait that long before it launches its retaliatory strikes at the Iranians? We simply don't know the answer to that question. It may very well be that they go ahead and do it much sooner. Again, it's simply a guessing game. But certainly the Iranians have said from their point that not only having American equipment and American troops on the ground, they see that as a major provocation. The Iranian foreign minister has also said that it is, or rather they have, no red lines when it comes to responding to the Israeli strike. So you have this situation where the Israelis will strike, the Iranians say they will strike back, and you take another step on up the escalation ladder, and it becomes more likely, of course, that you end up in a ballistic war. We saw a flavour of that, of course, on October the 1st, when the Iranians launched hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel. Now, around the scenes, there is, of course, some diplomacy going on, but so far in this conflict, which, remember, erupted on October the 7th, more than a year ago, diplomacy hasn't seemed to work very well at all. So there is a great deal of fear and nervousness across the region about what comes next.
OK, Alex, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk a bit more now about UNIFIL and the Israelis' determination to get that peacekeeping force out of the way. I'm joined by John Durnin, the former Deputy Chief Liaison Officer at UNIFIL, who did 5 tours with the peacekeeping force. And thank you very much indeed for joining us once again, John. Now, you wanted to keep this UN force in place. That is what is happening. You must be reassured.
Well, I certainly do hope that they stay in place. It's absolutely essential. Looking at those horrific pictures that were coming from Gaza a few minutes ago, and also from northern Lebanon, where there aren't peacekeepers. What I'd like to mention very briefly, and I don't want to take up your time, but the Israelis have a doctrine. It's known as the Dahia doctrine. As you know, Dahia is the enclave or the suburb there in Beirut, which is occupied or inhabited by a lot of Hezbollah people. And at the end of the 2006 war, the Israelis hammered it utterly. They more or less destroyed that area, and they called this doctrine after it. It was developed by a General Eisenkot, who at the time was the GOC of the Northern Command, and later GOC Chief of Staff of the IDF. And I'm just going to quote a couple of things that I find them quite shocking. But the logic of this doctrine is to harm the civilian population so much that they will then turn against the militants, forcing the enemy to sue for peace. We will wield disproportionate power and cause immense damage and destruction. This is not a suggestion. It's a plan that has already been authorized. Every one of the Shiite villages in South Lebanon is a military site with headquarters, an intelligence center, and a communication center. Hezbollah understands well that its fire from within the villages will lead to their destruction. Now, that is part of the doctrine that I am quoting there, and I think particularly the word, if I may refer to disproportionate power, that's what they want to use. And I don't have to, I'm not a lawyer.
Let me just...
Yes, sorry.
No, I just want to make the point. I mean, the Israelis, the Israelis are saying that they are, targeting Hezbollah, who they say started this on October the 8th by firing the rockets in. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu has been on television again tonight, and he says the best way to protect UNIFIL is to temporarily get UNIFIL out of harm's way. And he says Israel is not fighting UNIFIL, it is fighting Hezbollah. And then he goes on to say that Hezbollah is using UNIFIL facilities and positions as cover. So that is the Israeli position. I just wonder what you make of that.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm not the only person to mention this Dahya doctrine. It's been written about by The Guardian, by the Washington Post. Even Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, said that there was all restraint had been dropped by Israel, killing civilians and destroying infrastructure at an unprecedented rate. Now, the argument that Hezbollah have been using the UNIFIL as a human shield could be used on both sides. As you know, the Israelis pulled in very, very close, and in fact, they even entered a UNIFIL position in the last couple of days. So, I mean, it works both ways. Why Israel wants UNIFIL to be taken out of the picture is so that they can employ this doctrine and move in with the overwhelming, disproportionate force that they have already been using in Gaza and that they have already been using in northern Lebanon. Now they want to use it in southern Lebanon. At the moment, it's difficult for them because the presence of UNIFIL inhibits their total overwhelming use of force.
Yeah, if there is no peace to keep, which there isn't at the moment, and we've discussed this before, what is the purpose of the peacekeeping force in a conflict situation like this? What can it do that is useful in your view?
Okay, two points I would make very quickly. One is what I've just mentioned, the presence of UNIFIL in the various outposts, platoon posts, company and battalion positions that they have throughout the UNIFIL area of operations is a mitigating factor, is an inhibiting factor against the Israelis using overwhelming and disproportionate force. That's the first thing. The second thing is that even in the height of the conflict, even when the fighting is at its most severe, there are always lulls in the fighting, and that gives UNIFIL an opportunity. And don't know if they've done this yet, but we certainly did it when I was there before during other Israeli invasions, that during the lulls in the fighting, UNIFIL can use its armored vehicles, which are quite good, to go out and offer protection to rescue people who are inevitably left behind in villages and who are isolated. And by the way, invariably, most of those people tend to be old and women and children and people who were not able to evacuate when the Israelis told them to. The Israelis will argue, of course, that part of this doctrine is that they will first of all give a warning, get out before we come in with our overwhelming force. But you can see how ineffective that has been in Gaza, because the people are wondering, where do we go next? As you've seen, they've gone from one place to another, which have come under fire. And the same thing will happen in Lebanon.
All right. John Dernan, thank you very much for your insight. I appreciate your time once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching The World with me, Mark Austin. Still to come, we'll have more on Israel's military strategy in northern Gaza and on the humanitarian crisis there. And also Taiwan condemns major military drills carried out by China as irrational and provocative.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute. Okay. Thank you so much. Brad Pitt is now a prolific producer behind the scenes.
It's not a mystery to me. We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that? Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited, Tom Cruise. This is the story of the night.
It's the little independent film that could.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well? I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. Nobody could quite believe that it happened. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
Are you pleased that you did say yes to the job?
I've never regretted it.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me.
Yeah, okay.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
I've had a great time here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back to Beirut. Palestinian medical staff are reporting at least 10 people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on a food distribution centre in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Some former generals want the entire area to be treated as a military zone, even though there are still civilians living there with nowhere else to go. We're joined now by the former head of the Israeli National Security Council, Major General Giora Eland. Thank you very much for being with us. Let me just, if I can, understand what your plan is, because this is important. You want to tell the 400,000 in northern Gaza to go south to these humanitarian zones, so-called safe zones, and those who are left will be designated as Hamas fighters, as combatants. It would be a siege, in effect, and the choice would be they'd be left with no food and water, and the choice would be surrender or starve. Is that, broadly speaking, your plan?
Not exactly, and we have to understand why this plan has been presented, because you cannot begin the discussions about that. We have to understand what is really happening in Gaza first. And from the military point of view, Israel is quite successful in, let's say, destroying much of the military capabilities of Hamas. But from the civilian point of view, economic point of view, political point of view, Hamas manages to maintain the control of Gaza. And they maintain the control of Gaza for the obvious reasons that every day about 250 trucks of supply enter Gaza. All this supply is actually delivered by Hamas. And more than that, Hamas gets all the supply for free and they resell it to the people. So their profit in the past 12 months is about $500 million. And what they do with the $500 million, they easily can recruit new people that are going to replace those who have been killed.
Right.
But more important than that, we have to remember that Hamas is still keeping about 101 Israeli hostages. And as long as this is the situation in Gaza, and as long as the leadership of Hamas is quite content with the situation, because they do have a political control, they have no incentive, no reason to release the Israeli hostages. And the real question, what Israel can do in order to release them? Now
so if just let me make the point. Let me just make a point here. But if civilians either can't leave or won't leave on the grounds that there is nowhere safe in Gaza, they will starve to death under your plan. And my point is that that is unlawful.
I will answer your question. But let's remember, again, speaking about the hostages, the first hostages deal took place 11 months ago. And in that deal, we got 10 Israeli hostages alive every day. We released only a few Palestinian prisoners. The IDF did not have to withdraw or to redeploy or whatever. Why it happened? There is only one reason for that. Because before this deal, only 2 trucks of supply entered Gaza. And one of the demands of Hamas at that time, and rightly so from their point of view, is to increase the number of trucks from 2 to 200. This was the only reason why we could get so many, let's say, innocent Israeli hostages. And on the 9th day, they broke this deal. And if Israel returned to the 2 trucks a day, then we could win the war 2 months later. And we can save the lives not only of many Israelis, but also the lives of about 20,000 Palestinians. Now, going back to what you asked.
Yes.
Siege, according
I understand what you're saying. Can I just say, I understand what you're saying about what could have happened. My point is, with this plan, that if civilians can't leave or won't leave, they don't want to go to the Muwazi safe zone because it's been bombed about 18 times. I think 90 were killed in July, 19 were killed in September. They won't go there. Others are saying that Hamas will not let them leave. So my point to you is that if civilians can't leave or won't leave, they are stuck there, they will be starving to death. That is effectively going to be a war crime. You can't forcibly remove civilians. You certainly can't starve civilians.
No. So you're giving the answer or you ask the question? You're giving
no,
your
I just want the answer
you
to
want
that.
to hear my answer.
If the civilians, if the civilians won't leave, if the civilians won't leave voluntarily, what will you do?
I understand your question, and you asked it 3 or 4 times. You made some assumptions which are incorrect, so let's be correct what you are saying.
Okay.
First, let's agree that a siege is a legitimate, practical measure that can be taken against enemy, and you can cause your enemy either to surrender or to die in starvation if they refuse to surrender. And here I'm speaking about combatants. Do you agree with me that this is fully legal?
With combatants, I'm talking about civilians.
I am asking you
either don't want to leave or won't leave.
I'm asking you about combatants. Now let's speak about the civilians. There are, let's say, 300,000 people there. Before we begin any real siege, again, according to our plan, we will enable all those people about 10 days to evacuate and to leave this area with a very clear, safe corridors. This is exactly the way that the manual of the Department of Defense in the United States suggests that a siege will be done. Now, wait a second. We can ensure that all the civilians who are there, who want to live, including people who cannot walk, and people who are elderly, and people who are sick, and people who are wounded, we can make sure that all these people will be evacuated. Now, those who decide to stay there for whatever reason, then this is their choice. We are not necessarily...
All I would say to you...
No, wait a second. And the second point, you are speaking about, you mentioned that Hamas would not let them go. Let's remember that Hamas is the government in Gaza, and what is really happening in these very days is that Hamas is shooting at the people who want to leave this area. Now, if you have a better solution that will guarantee that the Israeli...
My final point to you. My final point to you is you cannot guarantee the safety of these people, even if they wanted to go, because the safe zones are being bombed and people are dying. People are describing the walk south as a walk of death. You're not going to persuade people to do that. So the plan is very difficult to implement.
Okay, what you are saying that it is better to attack this area in a regular military tactics, and the result will be that thousands of civilians will be killed because the terrorists and civilians are living together, operate together. Hamas is using their own civilians as human shield. So if thousands of civilians are killed there, not as a result of a siege, but as a result of ordinary military operation, this is fine. This is legitimate. This is something good. This is exactly what is happening in Gaza. We are trying to create a separation between the civilians and the combatants, and you are telling me, no, don't do it. Keep all of them together, fight against all of them, and the result will be thousands of civilians that are killed. This is okay with you?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that people won't want to go, and many of them can't go. That's all I'm saying. So I wondered what the plan was for that. But listen, General, it's very interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. Thank you.
I would like to comment to some of the points that you mentioned about Lebanon, with your permission. Because
we've run out of time on this issue at the moment, General. Make one point about Lebanon,
I want to say at least one important point about Lebanon, because everything that was said so far is a terrible bias of the reality. Who began this war on the 8th of October? Who began the war?
I've given you a chance to say. You say Hezbollah began the war on the 8th of October by firing rockets into Israel. Is that the point?
What is Hezbollah? Hezbollah is, practically speaking, the regime in Lebanon. Who is controlling Lebanon today? Who is part of the parliament? Who is part of the government? Who is the only one that can dictate what is happening in Lebanon? This is only Hezbollah. Hezbollah and the government of Lebanon is actually one unity. And they decided to attack Israel with no provocation, with no reason, on the 8th of October. And when finally we retaliate, you say, well, Israel is killing Palestinians, or in this case, Lebanese people. Now, 100%.
All right, General.
100%.
We've got to leave it there. General, we've got to leave it there. We've already about 2 minutes over our time. I'm sorry, we've got to leave it there. Now, listening to that was Sam Rose, the Senior Deputy Director of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency in Gaza. Sam, I don't know whether you heard that. I don't know whether you listened to much of that, but I just wondered what your reaction was to the plan outlined there by the general, the former general.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I was forced to listen to it and look. Just a few things come to mind, many of them along the lines of what you said. 400,000 people, we estimate, trapped inside northern Gaza and in Gaza City. They've been there for 13 months now. These are people who've either chosen to stay or who are unable to move, the sick, the elderly, the vulnerable. Forcible displacement of these people is illegal under international law. Is one thing. Secondly, as you said, this walk towards and through the valley of death, if they want to make the move, if they're allowed out by Hamas. Reports of Hamas stopping people from leaving, I can't confirm or deny those, but you know, there's no safe passage for people out of there. And I'm talking to you now in Nusayrat, which is just a few kilometers below the Wadi Gaza checkpoint. Our life, the life of everyone around here, is a life of bombardment, it's a life of bombs, it's a life of shelling. Just a few kilometers away from me here, this time last night, an UNRWA school that was today to be used as a polio vaccination center was bombed. 22 people in that school killed, the majority women and children, dozens more injured. You know, outside of me, the beaches are teeming with hundreds of thousands of people. There is simply no space here for people if they were to move. So it would be absolutely catastrophic.
Sam, what did you make of the general's point that Hamas are using these civilians as human shields? It's a point been made many times, but more specifically that Hamas, we are hearing, is refusing to allow many people to leave south for reasons, you know, that they can use the population there as a shield.
I mean, I can't confirm or deny that. I've heard the reports on the media. I mean, the road to northern Gaza is blocked, so we're not able to get up there. I work for a humanitarian organization. Our concern, the concern of the humanitarian community here in Gaza, is for the life, for the safety, for the protection of the civilian population who are being bombed relentlessly across the Gaza Strip. The place is so overcrowded, so cramped. The types of munitions that are being used mean that it's impossible for any attacks on whoever it's impossible to avoid those attacks causing mass civilian casualties. This is what we see day in, day out. 11,500 children have been killed in Gaza over the past year. That's one classroom full of children every day for a single year. We call on Israel to respect the integrity of humanitarian staff, humanitarian installations, and also on Hamas to respect that character, because this is precisely why people are dying, as we see on your video screen right now.
Sam, we should make the point, of course, that Israel denies that the plan being outlined by the general there is being implemented, and they would make the point that they've allowed trucks in tonight, some 30 trucks. I mean, is 30 trucks anywhere near enough in the current circumstances in northern Gaza?
I mean, absolutely not. You know, 30 trucks is probably what a kind of Tesco Express in a suburb of an English city receives over the course of a few days. This is an area, as I say, 400,000 people who've been deprived of any aid getting in for the past 2 weeks. This is a population that's on the verge of famine. So no, these small amounts of food, we welcome them and we hope that they will continue, but this supply needs to be increased and it needs to be sustained. And look, it's not just about trucks of aid. There are thousands of children in northern Gaza who are malnourished. These children need professional treatment at clinics from health professionals. They need safe conditions that allow them to go to those clinics every single day. People, of course, also need water. There's very little fuel inside northern Gaza right now, which means water supplies. We're hearing from staff and from civilians on the ground that the water supplies are simply dwindling. No supplies at hospitals, no supplies at health clinics either.
All right, Sam, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. You're watching The World with me, Mark Austin. Next up, with just 3 weeks to go till the US election, we look at a divisive issue which is also on the ballot in some states.
Day of this conflict. They keep telling us that they want aid. And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty? I want you to be honest with people. That has happened within minutes. Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back. India and Canada have expelled their top envoys after Justin Trudeau's government accused Indian agents of involvement in homicides, extortion and violent acts on Canadian soil. Canadian police said there'd been over a dozen credible and imminent threats to life. The Canadian Prime Minister has been speaking in the past few minutes.
Canada is a country rooted in the rule of law, and the protection of our citizens is paramount. That's why, when our law enforcement and intelligence officials began pursuing credible allegations that agents of the Government of India were directly involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, on Canadian soil, we responded.
Well, our India reporter, Neville Lazarus, joins me now. So another escalation in this row between these two countries.
That's right, Mark. There was a lull for quite some time between these very public tit-for-tat between the two countries, and not very good diplomatic relations. And This pertains to the killing of a Canadian citizen who was sort of a Sikh leader, separatist leader, and he was gunned down in June last year, after which Prime Minister Trudeau made those allegations. The Indian government rejected them, saying that these are baseless allegations. And now we've seen this almost pretty unprecedented kind of escalation of the diplomatic crisis between the countries, expelling 6 very senior diplomats, including the High Commissioner of India on that side with 5 diplomats here in India, the acting High Commissioner, his deputy, and 4 first secretaries. Now, the Indian government says these were baseless allegations that were made by the Canadian government, and it went on to say that an atmosphere of extremism and violence, the Trudeau government's actions endangers their safety, and that's the reason why they had to withdraw these diplomats from Ottawa. Now, we've heard from the government saying that their options are still open and they might take more action. It is a very sensitive subject, the Khalistan movement, the Sikh separatist movement in India. There was a bloody conflict in the 80s and 90s here, and since then it has been a very, very sensitive issue between the 2 countries now.
OK, Neville, thank you very much indeed. Now, there's just 3 weeks left now until Americans go to the polls to vote for a new president. Immigration, the economy, foreign policy and abortion are all key voter issues. And in 11 states, people will vote for or against abortion rights. As it stands, each state dictates its own laws, ranging from a total ban right through to complete access. Donald Trump believes that should remain the case, but Kamala Harris wants to restore national abortion protection laws. At one end of the scale is Texas, where an abortion is only allowed when a person's life is in danger. Compare that with California, among the more liberal states, where abortion is legal up to 24 weeks. Neighbouring Arizona has included abortion on the ballot. Currently, it's legal until the 15th week of pregnancy, with exceptions made for when a mother's life is at risk, but not for rape or incest. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports now from Arizona.
These are the protocols that you're going to follow. You're going to do the procedure. We do have protesters certain days of the week, especially
dozens of times a day. Irma explains the process and risks of abortion to women in this clinic.
20 and 1 pill. It's going to be a busy day.
May I get your first and last name, please?
But it's no longer simply a personal medical matter. Across this country, abortion is a burning election issue, especially here in the battleground state of Arizona, where it's literally on the ballot.
You have politicians that basically see something they can use and they're going to use it, no matter what it is.
Dr. Eunice sees how a patchwork of abortion laws across the country are putting women's lives at risk. Earlier this year, Arizona briefly enforced a law from 1864, completely banning all abortions.
These people were going across state lines, getting procedures done that can cause bleeding, delayed bleeding, and then coming back.
I felt defeated.
Across town, these women know intimately the myriad circumstances which lead to abortion, one after rape.
I found myself in an emotionally and mentally abusive relationship.
Others to save their own lives.
I carried my healthy twin daughter and my dead twin son. I was beyond devastated.
Kristen was 17 weeks pregnant when she was told her unborn child had severe fetal abnormalities.
Our baby was still, it was guaranteed she would live a short life, and it would be full of pain.
Already a mother to a young son, Kristen and her husband made the heartbreaking decision to get an abortion. But in Arizona, it was banned past 15 weeks. So they drove 7 hours across state lines to New Mexico for the procedure.
I truly could not believe it was happening. I didn't really have time at the time, the drive there, to reflect on how angry I was and how I had been so let down by my state.
What would you say to someone who might have long-held beliefs in banning abortion? What would you say to them?
For those people that are so against it, think of the other women, such as myself, who desperately want to have another baby. I had to use abortion care.
Proposition 139 will protect Arizona.
Reproductive rights are being used as a rallying cry for the Democratic Party.
Ballots dropped today.
I join State Representative Quante Cruz as she canvasses for support.
Ballots dropped today.
She's telling voters about a special measure on the ballot.
Prop 139 is regarding abortion access and allowing health care when women need to make those decisions with their doctors.
If approved, it would enshrine abortion rights into the state constitution. And the election mood here is febrile. This is a Kamala Harris campaign office, abandoned after not one but 3 shooting attacks. With polling showing Arizona balanced on a knife edge, Latino voters here could hold the sway. And some at this concert are more motivated by immigration and the economy than abortion.
I'm still up in the air about it, but I think only because of how the economy was functioning, things were cheaper. I'm going to vote for Trump.
With 3 weeks left to the election, time to win over undecided voters is fast running out. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Phoenix, Arizona.
Now it will travel 1.8 billion miles and take nearly 6 years to reach its destination. Today, a NASA spacecraft left Florida, destined for one of Jupiter's icy moons. Its mission to find out whether a vast underground ocean there could sustain alien life. Sky's science editor Tom Clark can explain more.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
It took the heft of a Falcon Heavy rocket to launch Europa Clipper on its 1.8 billion mile journey to Jupiter. This is the largest planetary space probe NASA has ever launched to look for the conditions needed for life to exist on Europa, one of Jupiter's icy moons.
Separation confirmed.
And there you go.
Its destination is believed to be a water world with salty ocean up to 100 miles deep, hidden beneath miles of ice. The probe will survey Europa's frozen surface, use radar to penetrate the ice and attempt to measure its ocean's depth and saltiness. If plumes of water erupt from the surface, they can be analysed for chemical signatures of life.
These potential habitats are below kilometres of ice. And so if there are life-forming conditions, we expect they're quite deep down in the deep dark. So you can think of the bottom of Earth's oceans where it's high pressure, very cold, very dark. These are enormous oceans that are like that throughout because they're beneath such thick ice crusts. When the water comes to you, that saves a lot of hassle.
Dr. Masters works on a European space probe, JUICE, which has already launched to study Europa and its sister moons Ganymede and Callisto. The 2 missions arrive in 2030 and 2031 and must endure some of the harshest radiation in the solar system. If both survive, there's double the chance to spot the conditions for alien life on Jupiter's moons. But if it exists, the job of finding life beneath miles of ice and ocean will fall to future missions. Tom Clark, Sky News.
Let's just bring you up to date with some other stories this evening. And the Taiwan Defense Ministry says 125 Chinese military aircraft and 17 warships were involved. China said the maneuvers served as warning to increase pressure against Taiwan independence. Right, well, that is just about it from Beirut, and it's been another day of bombing here, both in the north of Lebanon and also much more fierce fighting in the south of Lebanon. And this row about UNIFIL goes on with Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, insisting that the UNIFIL force will stay where it is, in position in southern Lebanon. And then Benjamin Netanyahu, again for the second night in 3 days, asking the UN to move that force. And Benjamin Netanyahu said the accusation that Israel deliberately attacked UNIFIL is completely and utterly false. The opposite is true, he said. Israel has repeatedly asked UNIFIL to stay away from the danger. It has repeatedly asked them to temporarily leave the combat zone. But tonight, the UN is still insisting that that force will stay. We'll leave you with pictures from Lebanon and from Gaza. And that is the world tonight. I am back at 10.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle. Why only in America? People want their country to war.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty? I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened